All
Right.
right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday. We are going to bake for peace. It's going to be sweet in a healthy way. All right, we'll just wait maybe a minute for everybody to come in. For those of you who are here, thank you for joining me. And if this is your first time, welcome into my kitchen. This is where I actually live and cook all the time, every day, all day long, sometimes even at night. And also where I ferment a lot of things. So you're looking at an actual kitchen space, nothing AI generated. I'm also real as far as I know. All right, so we are officially starting. Hello, welcome everybody. We are here to bake peace, not war, with a chocolate chip cookie. How good is that? And the chocolate cookie also has a secret fermented ingredient, which I will share with you. So my name is Karen Wong Diggs, Chef Karen, Karen fermentation fanatic. So I just want to welcome everyone. I am also a nutritionist and the founder of Crowdsource, or what is now known as the Little Fermenter. And by the way, for people who have been asking me about Crowdsource, when it is going to be back, it is actually available. And we'll talk about that at the end because I don't want to focus on that right now. I want to focus on our peace cookies. Okay. Peace and love, everyone, and wrap it around in chocolate. How good is that? Okay, so you know what? Before I start, Vicky, can you see if either Hannah or Patricia are here right now? Hannah, if you are here, identify yourself, raise your hand. If anybody, or actually, if
Yeah, I'm
anybody,
seeing.
okay, if anybody came in and you notice that you are named as me, I'm sorry, it was a little technical glitch. You can rename yourself by hovering over your image and then clicking on those three little dots, and then you can rename yourself if you came in as me. Okay, and I apologize for that little glitch. Okay, so since Hannah and Patricia are not here yet, I will continue. Patricia and Hannah are my cameo guests, and I'll explain to you later why I invited them on. So, in the interest of time, though, I will move forward with the recipe. So, Vicky, can you also do camera two, like highlight both?
Okay.
That way people can get a better look.
Yeah, let's see.
Welcome, everybody. We are starting with the ingredients for the World Peace Cookie. And I just want to say, full disclosure, I did not invent the World Peace Cookie. I came up with this idea for the webinar because at the start of the year, there was a lot of unhappy news, let's just put it this way, coming through. And I got really disturbed and upset. And the idea of like baking a cookie to make myself feel better came into my mind. And then I was thinking, oh, how about bake peace, not war? And so I checked on the online, and indeed there was already a world peace cookie. So I thought this is great. So I took the original recipe, which was created by a French chef. His name is Pierre Hermé. And he shared that recipe with Dorie Greenspan about 20 years ago. Now, for those of you who don't know Dorie Greenspan, she's like a baking guru. I actually have not heard of her until I found the World Peace Cookie. So I found that recipe. So I want to give full credit to Pierre Hermé, the initial French chef who created a French style chocolate chip cookie. And he shared that recipe with Dorie Greenspan. So their recipe is actually conventional. They're using regular flour, sugar, and so forth. So I revamped the recipe that I'm sharing with you today. It is gluten-free. It has very little sugar compared with the original recipe. Plus, I advocate for using ingredients that support the communities rather than being extractive. And I'm using a special chocolate that is from Choco Vivo from my good friend Patricia, who's located in LA. And I think Hannah, are you on? No, Hannah's not on yet, huh?
Yeah,
Okay, I
she
thought I
is.
saw her.
She
She
is.
is,
She just
okay.
is.
Yeah, could you bring
Hey.
Hannah on for a second? Hey, Hannah.
Okay, I'm trying.
So
Okay, there.
hover over her
Yeah.
image, Vicky, and then just and then also spotlight her.
Mm-hmm. Um, did that do it? No.
So you're
Okay.
still hovering over. Okay, sorry, you guys. There we go. There's Hannah. Hi, Hannah. So everybody, I will
Hi.
quickly introduce Hannah of Kombucha Camp. She's also known as Kombucha Mama. So I am like I brought two fermentation sisters on today. Patricia may or may not be joining us because she's busy in her brick and mortar store on a Saturday. Hannah doesn't have a brick and mortar, but she's probably busy as well. So I appreciate you hopping on. So Hannah is the creator of Kombucha Cam, and here's my kombucha thing. And I've known Hannah for years. She's also the author of the Big Book of Kombucha, which you can see right behind her. And she's the one who introduced me to Patricia of Choco Vivo. So that's why I wanted to come in and just welcome Hannah. Thank you for being on. And Vicky, if you could drop the link to Hannah's website, that would be great. So for those of you who are interested in getting uh, more education on kombucha or water kefir, Hannah's website is fantastic. And Hannah, maybe you could just say one thing about what you would like to see for peace.
Absolutely. Inspired by you, and because tomorrow is World Ferment Day, which was created by Joe Webster, and she purposely chose Imbolc, which is a Celtic cross-quarter holiday when the stirrings of spring are just starting, not when spring's fully here. I am hosting a free workshop tomorrow called Peace, Love, Booch, where we'll be making a lavender and rose kombucha, and I'll be sharing more about St. Bridget and Imbolc and how this all relates to fermentation. So the thing I wanted to say about peace is it starts with you, it starts from within, and it starts with calming the inflammation that might be in your body. And fermented foods is a really inexpensive, delicious way to do that. So I am so grateful for your inspiration, Karen. I love that you're working with fermented cacao because people may not realize
Yes.
chocolate is fermented and
Yep.
making these beautiful, delicious cookies. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. And you know what? Feel free to drop the link for your workshop if you can, and
Yes.
we'll share it. Okay, cool. Thank you, Hannah. And you know, by the way, if you cannot stay for the whole thing, hop off. Like, it's okay. I know everybody's busy. So let's get back to the recipe. Vicky, can you highlight the ingredients, camera two? Yay! All right, so we have, because like I said, it is a chocolate chip cookie, but it's very chocolate chip, as you can see from this. It's like chocolate heart. Okay. The original creator of the recipe, Pierre Hermé, because he's a French pastry chef, he wanted to create something that was similar to a French sablé cookie, which is a kind of like a French version of a shortbread cookie, but it tends to be more tender and lots of butter and just really rich as compared with the more traditional American style chocolate chip cookie, which I think tends to be a little bit softer and kind of doughy. So that would be the difference between the two. As far as ingredients, the ingredients are pretty simple. It's just high quality chocolate, and I will share the. Actually, Vicky, can you drop the link for Patricia's chocolate? And the reason why I chose Patricia's chocolate as opposed to like Hershey's, okay, or something else, is because it is sourced mindfully. Patricia actually knows the growers of the cacao, and Yeah, and it's a really high quality product. So the chocolate chips that I'll be using, the chocolate chunks, is 80% cacao. That's my preference, but you should use at least 60%. 75 is great, 80 is even better. So this is the chocolate. I am also using a gluten-free flour blend. This particular one is from Bob's Red Mill, but in your recipe, I also give another source, which is also blended by another good friend of mine who has a gluten-free bakery in California. So we want gluten-free flour. This is unsweetened cocoa powder, and I didn't really give a source for that. You guys can source one, but you know what? I think Choco Vivo also has cacao powder. We are going to add in some baking soda. This helps the cookie expand a little bit after baking. And also sugar. But like I said, I cut the original amount of sugar from Dorie Greenspan's recipe, which equaled, I think, almost to 1 cup. So that's a lot of sugar. What I have in my recipe is 1/3 of a cup of organic sugar. And I'll talk about sourcing sugar a little bit later. The other ingredients, butter. We all love butter. And vanilla extract. And the secret fermented ingredient is going to be, I think some of you might have guessed if you saw the recipe, Shio Koji. And just for interest, who have never heard of Shio Koji? If you want to okay, so if you have never heard of Shio Koji, put a 1 in the chat. I just kind of want to see. Any ones coming up, Vicky?
Just 2, 3, 5,
Okay, a
6.
few.
And
Okay.
Karen, I think that Patricia is here too if you wanted to introduce her.
Oh, okay. So let me wrap up the Shio Koji and then we can invite Patricia on. Yay, Patricia.
Okay.
So Shio Koji is like one of the hottest trends in the culinary world right now. It is originating from a mold or a fungi known as Aspergillus oryzae. And people are making their own koji or Shio Koji, which is a very salty condiment that you can add to almost anything. The power of using Shio Koji in baked goods is it adds that umami salty flavor. So for this recipe, instead of using salt, I'm using Shio Koji. And plus the final product in baking actually makes the mouthfeel finer. Because this is a sablé or like sandy, sablé means kind of sandy in French. So we want a very fine texture. So adding the Shio Koji gives it an extra nice soft texture. But you don't have to use Shio Koji. You can just use regular sea salt. All right, so Patricia, hey,
Let's see.
we'll bring you on, Vicky.
There you go.
Hello, hello. Oh, you know what? That is not Patricia.
No, she just came in under
No.
your name. Okay.
I know not. Is it Jessica? My eyesight is a little bit bad. It's not Jessica. Okay. So Vicky, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. I know it's confusing. So anyway, I will carry on. So we are going to do the cookie right now. Now, it definitely helps if you have a blender like I have. And it doesn't have to be a KitchenAid. So for serious bakers, I'm assuming that you guys do have one at home. If not, you can actually do this by hand. It's just going to take a little longer, but it can definitely be done by hand. So don't be deterred by the fact that I'm using a blender for expedience sake. So what we want to do is you grab your bowl. We want to put in butter. So I already cut it into little chunks, and it should be at room temperature. It's all measured out. So we want to put in the butter. Now, one little tip I want to give you about using sugar in baking and how to amplify the sweetness while also cutting down the sugar. And this is really, really important. So as I mentioned before, I already cut down the sugar from the original recipe, and I'm using 1/3 cup of an organic sugar. Now, my secret ingredient for amplifying the sweetness on the recipe without adding more sugar is stevia. So stevia is a plant, and when the leaves are harvested and dried and ground into a powder, it can be used as a natural sweetener. Now, I know there are some of you who are saying, yuck, stevia tastes really medicinal. I don't like it. Okay, when I'm doing it in baking, I always just use a tiny, tiny amount with regular sugar. And because of the power of stevia to amplify sweetness, it really is, at least so far of what I do, to amplify the sweetness without adding a lot of sugar, as I said before. So for this recipe, we're going to add in about 1/8 teaspoon. And don't be tempted to add a lot, because when people add too much, that's when it tastes bitter and weird, and it has this like saccharine sweetness to it, but it's totally natural, and it's been used as a sweetener for a really, really long time. Great, Vicki, that's what I want. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to measure.
Karen, we have some questions about alternatives to stevia. Can you use monk fruit or sucanat or other sugars?
Okay, I will answer that in a minute, and that's a good question. So my little trick for adding stevia to sugar is, because sometimes it tends to clump together, and when you're mixing it in the mixer, you don't want the stevia to be clumping and then like just one little thing of stevia in the corner. You want to like spread it evenly. So I'll add it to the sweetener that I'm using, and then I'll use a little whisk or whatever you want to do. Just break it apart into the sugar, right? That way it ensures even distribution. Okay, and now we're going to move the blend to my handy dandy blender.
Karen, can I interrupt you? It is past 10:15 if you want to pull those cookies from the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Vicki. I already pre-made a couple of logs. We just need to let this thaw out for a little bit. Thank you, Vicki. All right, so we have the butter at room temperature in my mixing bowl. We're going to use the paddle. So I'm going to cream the butter, the sugar, and the vanilla extract together. And I'm going to start with the butter first to kind of get it soft. And you don't have to do any of this on high. It's basically the low setting, like setting 1 or 2. Okay, so while the butter is like getting a little soft and comfortable, I will talk about sweeteners. Yes, you can substitute monk fruit for this. But just remember, depending on the chocolate that you're using, the chocolate will still have sugar in it, if you're concerned. But definitely, for instance, the recipe calls for 1/3 cup organic sugar. You can do half of that in regular sugar and half in monk fruit, or you can substitute with all monk fruit sugar. I will still use the stevia to kind of amplify that sweetness. You can also use coconut sugar, but be careful where you're sourcing it from. And at the end, I also want to share a new sugar that I have found. It's called Jaggery by a company called Diaspora Co. But I'll talk about this a little bit later because it is very pricey compared with other forms of sugar. Okay, so our butter is now nice and creamy. Oh, there you are, nice and creamy butter. Hello, hello. All right. And now I'm going to add in the sugar and just cream that together for a little bit. And you guys notice I'm not using a spatula that's made from plastic or silicone. I've swapped out all of these little implements for either bamboo or wood. And it works just as fine, or just as well. Okay, so we add the sugar in, let it cream. While it's creaming, I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. There it goes. Okay, we're going to let that cream a little bit. And then the other ingredient I'm going to put in is Shio Koji. And I will talk about koji or Shio Koji and how it's made after I've done the cookie dough. But this is basically my Shio Koji. When you look at it closely, it sort of looks like rice congee. Okay? But it smells really sweet and salty at the same time. So I'm going to put in about 2 teaspoons of Shio Koji into the butter here. And that is going to substitute for salt. So again, if you don't have Shio Koji or if you don't want to bother with it, then just use sea salt. And in your recipe, I have the amount for sea salt that you would use for this recipe. So I put it in about 2 teaspoons of Shio Koji to this recipe. And I will keep on blending to cream the butter. In the meantime, we need to sift together our dry ingredients, and that's really important, particularly for this recipe. And again, when you're baking with cocoa powder, it also tends to clump together. So that's why we want to sift. So I have my sifter here. I have the cocoa powder, the baking soda, and the gluten-free flour. And I'm just going to put it onto my sifter. And if you want to facilitate sifting a little quicker, you can just press onto it. So as you can see, I'm using a rice paddle as my spatula nowadays. It works just as well. Okay. Okay, so I'm sifting the flour into the bowl. And this is primarily to break up any clumps, especially with the cocoa powder. Okay, let me check my butter. So the butter's looking really good. And maybe I'll bring it. Okay. All right, so I'll just show you guys. You know, the butter, when you cream it, it tends to go to the side of the bowl. So what you want to do is kind of gather it back a little bit to the center before you put in your flour ingredients. Okay, so I'm just gathering it back into the center. Putting it back on. All right, so we are going to just keep on sifting this. And as I'm sifting this, I'll just share with you my thoughts about sugar. Okay. I grew up in Hawaii where there were endless fields of sugar cane because C&H sugar was such a prominent entity on the islands. But as some of you, I'm sure, are aware, the extraction, the growing of sugarcane also has an unfortunate history with colonization and slavery. And so it is worth it if you are community-minded, sustainably minded, politically minded to be more mindful of where we source our ingredients, then I would suggest that you look into where your sugar comes from. So in the United States, I think Domino sugar and C&H sugar are the most prominent. And like I said, both of these types of sugar do not really have a good historical background. There is one that I do use, is called sucanat. And sucanat is much more sustainable, even in the way it is made. It's just basically, they take the cane sugar, they dry it naturally. And so a lot of the minerals and enzymes and whatnot are still in the sucanat. And I think sucanat, it just means sugar natural. Whereas with white sugar, at least the conventional type of sugar, there's a lot of extraction, chemical processing. So when you get the white sugar, it really is just literally like sweet, sweet sugar without the benefits of the minerals and the nutrients which are inherent to sugarcane. So that's one thing about sugar. And of course, the other thing about sugar is the health implications. So I mentioned before that I cut the sugar from almost a cup from the original recipe to 1/3 cups. Now I did a little math. So primarily in every teaspoon of sugar equals 4 grams. So when I did the math on the original recipe, every every cookie from the original recipe would have been almost 6 teaspoons of sugar in one cookie. And I'm not counting the sugar that's in the chocolate because that's a little hard to calculate. That's the original recipe. With my recipe, it's a little less than 3 teaspoons per cookie. So we cut it by half. And so in terms of blood sugar regulation and health and all of that, it is worth it to really, even when you work with your own recipes, to cut it if you can. Because a lot of the recipes, I have a feeling that people are just adding sugar because it is cheap. It's a cheap commodity, but it comes at a price. And I really feel like historically, sugar was an expensive commodity. People didn't eat nearly the amount of sugar that we're eating today. And so we should be mindful of how much we're ingesting. And the other thing that we should be mindful of is the sourcing. Okay, so I think this is sifted enough. I'm just going to add this a little bit in. All right, so this is nicely sifted. Now at this point, we're going to add our sifted flour to this bowl here. And what I would recommend is that before you turn on your blender, because the cocoa powder is actually very fine, and if you turn it on, it could be like a plume of powder is going to hit you and the air. So I'll show you a little trick. All right, so, and I'm just going to add about a third first. So I'm going to pour about a third in. Okay, and here's the little trick. Otherwise, like I said, you'll be covered with like cocoa powder. And if you're wearing white, it's sort of not that great. Drape a little towel onto your whole setup here before you add the powder in. This will help alleviate that dust. Okay, so I'm kind of churning it a few times. Okay, it's mixed in. I'm going to pour in the rest and continue blending. The end product at this stage is you want something that's going to clump together sort of like clay. And this is a very dry looking dough, so it's not going to look like a batter at all because there's only butter and dry ingredients and a little bit of vanilla and the Shio Koji. Okay, so let me check it. Okay, it's almost there. We're blending it. And then the last ingredient would be the chocolate chips. And there's a very important step as to how we want to process the chocolate. Okay, let's see. You know, cooking is also very audio. I love the sound of, I can hear the dough as it clumps together as to how it's going to look. So I can tell by the sound that it's already clumped together. And I'll just show you what we're looking for. There's some dough still on the side of the bowl, but that's okay. Vicki, can you give us a close-up on camera too? Or do both? Yeah. So you can see what we're looking for. The dough should be kind of clay-ish like that. It's going to hold together, but it's not going to be a very soft-looking dough. So that's what we're after. And you don't want to overblend because you're going to heat up the butter too much. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to let that rest a little bit and talk about how to cut your chocolate chips. Okay, the other main point about the cookie and why it's so special, and I learned this from Dorie Greenspan, who did the original recipe. She specifically, and also Pierre Hermé specifically, did not want to use ready-made chocolate chips because ready-made chocolate chip, usually they use a lower grade chocolate, not always, sometimes. Plus, every chip is like the same size, and it's very boring, very dull on your tongue when you bite into this cookie. So what they wanted was to have different size of chocolate. So when you bite into the cookie, there's like a textural adventure. Like every bite is going to be a little bit different. And indeed, I've made this cookie now several times, and that's what people have said. They're like, oh, I really like when you bite into it, you don't know what to expect. So if you can, buy yourself like baking chocolate that comes in a bar. And the one that I bought from Choco Vivo is actually a big hunk of baking chocolate, okay? And you can find it on Patricia's website. It comes in a big hunk like this, so it's like professional baking chocolate. But if you bake a lot, it's totally worth it to invest it because when you buy a big chunk like that, it's much cheaper than buying the chocolate chips that usually comes in a plastic bag. So I bought the big block from her, and I just cut it into little blocks. And this is what I'm going to add to the cookie. And I will show you how to cut this. It's actually not that difficult. So first of all, you want to measure out your chocolate. So I already cut some of the chunks. What you want to do is get a sharp chef's knife. And if you see the recipe, when you're cutting it into little chips, make sure that you don't have a ginormous hunk of chocolate. You want each chip to be a little bit less than 1/3 inch. And you don't have to be obsessive, like you don't have to go and measure every chunk. Okay, don't do that. You're just gonna eyeball it. So here, I have a fairly big chunk. So I'm just going to use my chef knife. And as you can see, the nature of the chocolate is when you cut into it, it's going to start breaking up into little chunks anyway. And what you really want to do is just go back and kind of give the extra big pieces an extra cut, making sure that they're not super big. But you really want to have like little chips like this, again, because of the tactile sensation when you bite into it, which makes it very fun. So let's see, I have a few big chunks here. I'm going to give that a cut. And as you can see, although the chocolate chunk looked very solid and difficult to chop, when you go over it with your chef's knife, it's actually really easy. And this kind of baking chocolate is as delicious as a bar of chocolate and super crunchy. I love it. Okay, so I think all my chunks are pretty good. I'm just gonna, all right. So I have my chocolate chips or chocolate chunks here. I'm gonna put it back here. And now we're ready to add the chocolate chips, hand cut into the dough. And if you're going to use chocolate chips, that's totally fine too. But just know that the texture is not going to be as interesting. So I have my dough here, and I'm just going to, again, scrape the dough from the side of the bowl back into the center. Okay, and this is very important. When you add your chocolate chunks or chocolate chips into your dough here in the bowl, you only want to stir it for like 2 to 3 turns. You don't want to over blend it. So it's just a very, very quick mix. So I'm putting back my paddle. And I'm adding in my chips. Again, they should be fairly big chunks, but less than 1/3 inch. Okay, so the chocolate is just going to go in. And literally, like, I do this. I turn it a couple of times. Do that. All we're doing is we want to incorporate the chocolate chips, but not overdo it. So let me just kind of do it one more time. Okay, and that's it. That's all we need to do. Super fast, super quick. And now I'm going to put my dough onto the board here and show you how to roll it up into a log without using plastic wrap. How good is that? Okay, Vicky, so if you can do camera 2. All right, so where's my handy dandy? Okay, so as you can see, the dough is going to look, you're going to see bits of chocolate, chunks of chocolate into it. It doesn't look totally cohesive, but actually that's what we want. It's super easy. So I'm going to turn this onto a clean surface. If you are a seasoned baker and if you have a marble top, this is when you want to use the marble top. And because we do have chocolate here and butter, you do not want to be doing this if your kitchen is like 100 degrees, okay? I mean, you can, but you would definitely need that marble top. So you want to have a fairly cool kitchen. I mean, today in San Francisco is perfect. I think it's probably like 65 degrees right now. And also, if your hands start to heat up because it's like the summer, just run your hand under cold water or rub a cube of ice on your hands to cool your hands off before you do this. But as you can see, this dough is very forgiving. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to turn this into 2 logs so it's easier to handle. And if you want to put it on the scale and divide it completely evenly, you can do that as well, which is what I usually do. But for today, I'm just going to eyeball it. You can use a knife, or I have a bench scraper that's made from wood. Cut it into half. Okay, that looks about right. And now we're going to take one piece and roll it into a log. And honestly, this dough is really fun to play with. It just feels like clay. So pretend like you're a kid and you're playing with Play-Doh and you're going to roll this into a log. Okay. And you'll find that you could even just kind of let it, you see how because I don't want to overhandle it. Okay. You see how I'm kind of doing this and I'm letting it roll back and forth on its own. And by the tension of rolling back and forth, it will turn into a log very nicely, and you don't have to press it. I'm just lightly letting it roll back and forth. And this is like really fun and very therapeutic. So if you're feeling belligerent and warlike, this is very peaceful. Totally true. It almost makes me want to like sit and meditate right now because this is like such a lovely movement. Okay. All right, so now we have a log, and you'll find that the ends may not be completely flat. So what you want to do is just give it a low tap, give it a low tap, and then you have a log. What we're after is the diameter should be about 1.5 inches, give or take a little bit. All right, so at this stage, usually people are going to wrap it in plastic, and store it in the fridge. I mean, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know if you're new, but I always advocate for not using plastic when you can. So we're just going to use a piece of parchment paper. Parchment paper right here. Put your log in the middle of the paper. Vicki, can we have camera 2 again? Cool, thank you. And so just make sure you have a piece that's big enough because we're going to roll the ends. So what I do is I put my log in the center of the parchment. I gather it up like this, and for one end, I'll twist it. Okay, exactly as if you were using saran wrap. And then on this other end, I will twist it. And then now you have a nicely sealed log. You can give it a little roll like this, and that's all ready to go into the fridge. And you want to rest your dough in the fridge for at least 3 to 4 hours. You can rest it overnight. It can stay in there for days in the refrigerator, and you can even freeze it. For this recipe, though, I do recommend baking the cookies first and then freezing it if you want to. All right, so basically this is what we're after. It's pretty easy, right? Any question on these steps so far?
No questions yet.
Okay, cool. All right, so once you have your little logs, you just put it into your refrigerator. And this is my refrigerator. I'm just going to shove it into the butter keeper here and let that go. I mean, I probably won't even get to it until tomorrow. For the sake of time, I'm not going to handle this other log right now. I'm just going to set it in a plate, and I'm going to put it in the fridge just to keep it cool as we are continuing. See you later. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to bake our chocolate chip cookies. So you will notice if you're looking at the recipe that the temperature is 325 degrees. Usually 350 is the temperature for baking cookies, but because this cookie is very short, as in it has a lot of healthy fat in it, we want to bake it at a lower temperature. That way there's no issue with over baking it. So 325 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 minutes. If you're using regular flour, then the time is about 12 minutes. We're using gluten-free, and it usually takes a little bit longer. but 15 minutes is what you want when you're baking it. The other thing that's important about this recipe is that you need to cut each cookie 1/2 inch. And it's really important for the integrity of the cookie. If it's too thick, it's almost like too much of a cookie. If it's too thin, it's going to crumble kind of easily. So you really want to have it at 1/2 inch. And you can easily do that by grabbing a ruler. Okay, so we're going to grab a ruler. Here's my ruler, okay, an old-fashioned ruler. And you're going to mark 1/2 inches. So I'm just going to grab a little, I usually grab a little paring knife. And here, I'll tilt this to the camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So 1/2 inch, half, half, half. So you're just going to mark at every 1/2 inch and put a little mark there. Okay, so I have my marks, and now I'm going to cut my cookie rounds. With this dough, and because the chocolate are in chunks, when you cut it, it might actually break apart a little bit, but it's totally okay. You can put it back together. So that's why I also want to demo the cutting and show you. So I have my 1/2 inch mark here. I'm going to cut it. Okay. And as you can see, little chunks of chocolate might pop out, but just press it back in. So we have half. Okay, so I'm just cutting 1/2 inch. All right, so these are my cookie rounds, and you're going to grab a baking sheet. I don't use any nonstick baking sheets. I just use a regular baking sheet lined with parchment, not tin foil. And you can probably see here, there's like a little indentation of where I had baked a batch before. You can reuse the parchment, it's totally fine. Save some resources, right? So I'm just going to literally put it on where I had the previous cookies. You want to place the cookies about 1.5 inches to 2 inches apart because they will expand. Okay. All right, so I have my cookies, as you can see, spread apart. And then we're going to pop it into a 325 preheated oven and bake it for 15 minutes. So because I haven't preheated my oven, I'm just going to turn it on now. 325. Okay, and because I've been busy talking to you and I didn't preheat my oven, I'm going to try and put this into the refrigerator while my oven is preheating. Hopefully there's enough space there. I'm going to juggle things a little bit. And next, I'm going to talk about the Shio Koji, which you also have a recipe for. But right now, are there any questions up to this point?
We don't have any questions, Karen. It is 10:45.
Okay, cool. All right, so the last thing I will share with you, and then we can open it up for comments, questions, what have you, because I love to hear from you as well, is the Shio Koji. So how do we make Shio Koji? You make Shio Koji by purchasing koji that's already made. So koji is basically rice inoculated with the Aspergillus oryzae mold. And when I say mold, don't be deterred, because mold is basically just like a tiny, tiny, tiny mushroom. They are in the fungi kingdom. So the rice is inoculated with the koji spores, and then you get koji. And koji just looks like rice, and it is coated. So it looks like rice that has like a very fine coating on top. And you can purchase koji already made. The koji that I use, I have some right here actually, is this one from Amazaki.co. But I also make my own koji, and I do teach koji making workshops at a beautiful place called Preserved in Oakland. So you can check their schedule. The next class that I'm teaching is, I think, in March. These are in person. And I also make my own koji. So you need to have koji. And then I'm not going to show you the whole process. You have the recipe. You just want to add salt and water into a glass jar. And you're going to stir it every day for about 7 to 10 days at room temperature. And then over time, you'll see that the rice koji will soften and become sort of like oatmeal consistency. And once it reaches that stage, it is ready. Then it is Shio Koji. And for those of you who are like, you know, you're kind of tapped into like the current culinary trends, or if you go to like gourmet stores, you'll see that koji, Shio Koji is being sold in packs, in containers, and it tends to be pretty pricey because it seems to be like a culinary specialty food. And of course, when something is a specialty food, it always has a higher price tag. But when you make your own, it's super, super affordable. And the Shio Koji, once you have made it, it will keep for a long time in the fridge because of the high salt concentration. And also it is beneficial for health because it is a fermented product. And so that's what I want to say about koji. Excuse me. And the other thing that I want to show you is I have also been experimenting in using koji in baking. So I actually made this loaf of bread yesterday, adding in Shio Koji. Okay. I'm still experimenting on this. This is not gluten-free. I'm using sprouted flour, but I think it looks pretty good. And it smells really good. The texture is kind of like, for those of you who know pain de mie, it's kind of like Pullman bread. So the texture is kind of like Pullman bread. But there's a special flavor to it because of the addition of the Shio Koji. Okay, so that's about Shio Koji. The thing that I want to wrap up with is little tip about piping decorations onto this cookie. So what I use when I want to pipe something is, icing sugar has a lot of sugar. I mean, I like a lot of sugar. And when you pipe something onto something that's already sweet, then you're piling on more sugar. So for this particular recipe, I decided to use white chocolate chips, and I just melted it over a double boiler, like a bowl. And I'll show you how I did that here. So, what I did is, this is a little bowl, a little pot with water, stainless steel bowl. This is what I had melted this morning. So I'm adding in my chocolate chips. And what I did too is, because I also have some cocoa butter or cacao butter, which I also got from Cocoa Vivo. Cocoa butter is actually a very healthy, nutrient-dense food, and it gives you a nice creamy texture. So I added in a little bit, just like a little chunk of the cocoa butter, and I melted it with the white chocolate chips. Once the chocolate has melted, then it can be piped onto anything that you want. And yes, the white chocolate chips, it does have sugar, but it's a lot less sugar than if you were making icing sugar. And the last thing I want to show you is how to fold a parchment paper piping bag to do this kind of fine decoration without using a piping bag. It's like, piping bags, they're big usually, or too big for this purpose. And then you have to clean it. You lose a lot between the pipe and the bag. So usually when I'm doing a small amount of decoration like this, I do what is known as a cornet in French, or cornet. So, Vicky, can you see okay, or should I adjust the board a little bit? Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you want to fold a piece of parchment into a triangle. Okay, so we have like a big triangle here. For this purpose, it's probably about 8 inches, 8 inches. What is this, a isosceles triangle or something? All right, so now you want to use a sharp knife. Oops. Oops. Am I still on, Vicky? Oh, I am.
Yes, you
Okay,
are.
that
You
was
are.
okay. My computer went weird and I thought I had lost everybody. So you want to fold it into a triangle and then you're going to cut the triangle using a sharp knife. Okay, as I say sharp knife, my knife is obviously not sharp enough. Let's use this little paring knife here and see if it goes better. There we go. Okay, so we want to make a sharp cut. And now we have a triangle. And at this point, you are just going to fold it up. I'm holding the tip to tip. And basically what you're making is a little cone with your parchment paper, right? So I have a little cone with my parchment paper, and I'm going to tuck this in. And now you have a piping bag. Ta-da! Isn't that simple? You do want to make sure that the tip is closed because you can always cut it with a scissor to the width that you want in terms of piping. So this is a super simple parchment piping bag when you want to do something small like this. And it's super easy. And guess what? When you're piping chocolate, you lose a lot of chocolate in a regular piping bag. But with this, you don't lose any chocolate because whatever is stuck at the tip, you just let this set at room temperature and then you can peel away the parchment and then you still have like little bits of chocolate that you can eat. So you're also not wasting anything. So that's why I advocate that people learn how to make this little cornet. And it's going to probably take you a couple of tries to do this, but definitely it is a technique that's worth perfecting if you want to do more decorations. Okay, so that is what I have today. The last thing I want to share is for those of you who have been like emailing me and asking me about crowdsource, the little fermentation device. It is back. And Vicky, if you could drop the link. So it fits onto any mason jar and it helps you to make sauerkraut or pickles or kimchi and all that good lacto-fermented stuff. It is back. And I'm just going to be very transparent here. As you know, the political moment that we are in, because it is an imported product, because it is made from high-grade stainless steel, which is impossible to make in the US. It would cost a lot if we can't even do it in the US, quite frankly. So it is imported. But for those of you who have been using it, you know that it is really good quality. Originally, we did want to give a discount for it coming back, but unfortunately, we were slapped with almost 75% tariff as compared to, like 15% years ago. So as a result, we cannot afford to give a discount, but it's still very reasonably priced. And if you go to the website, you will notice that if you buy two, then you get free shipping. So anything that you purchase on the website over $75 will activate free shipping. So I hope that's enough of a offering for you. And we'll see what happens with the tariffs. We would like to pay less tariffs and pass that savings on to you at a time that's possible. But, it's still a good deal because it is stainless steel. And if you start making your own fermented stuff at home, you know that it'll be a lot cheaper and much more sustainable. All right, so Vicky, I think I've covered everything. Are there any comments or questions?
I have listed all the links there in the chat
Okay.
room for everybody. And there are no questions. Lots of thank yous, Karen.
Okay, and thank you, everyone. And like I said, please bake for peace. Also, when you're making this cookie or anything at home in your kitchen, just kind of keep in mind that the energy you transmute to your final food is important. So you really want to have like a calm, peaceful state of mind. At the very least, just don't be angry, don't be mad. Okay? Make peace, not war, or big peace, not war. And I think we can do this together as a community. Oh, one more thing. I forgot to talk about this. So this is a company. It's called Diaspora Co. And I just found this sugar recently, and they are a truly sustainable, community-based company that also sells spices. This particular sugar is called jaggery, and it's basically the Indian version of non-processed cane sugar that has been used for centuries in India. So if you are looking for a sustainable sugar substitute, you can look on this website. It is a lot more expensive because they're trying to support a whole community, including the farmers. And I have to say, I have added this into like a cup of tea. It is a highly nutritious, incredibly good tasting sugar. It is like a nutrient dense sugar. So I will vouch for the quality for sure. So anyway, that's it, you guys. Everybody, I thank you again for joining me. The video for this, the recording will be sent out by Monday if you need to rewatch any part of it. And feel free to share the video once you have it with everybody. Like I said, I'm not a highly politically vocal person, but I think we are at a junction here where we want to come together as a community and spread peace. And one of the ways to do that is by being mindful of where our food comes from, how it is sourced, and spending more time in your kitchen making delicious things. And thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Peace be with everyone.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Karen.
Bye-bye.